repairing a 5-ton electric log splitter. What was happening is it was leaking on both ends. They just siliconed the flanges here on both sides, and I guess the silicone broke down and ended up starting to leak. Oil is picked up through this manifold block when you press the pedal. Proceeds to go through the gear pump on the motor. Pressure rises and piston goes forward. Once you're done splitting the wood, the ram is spring loaded and returns back, and the pump goes into bypass mode until you engage pressure again. So we'll get this in here. I don't have that gasket on this side yet. I did end up putting a block of wood in here. I would recommend maybe like for the slider piece, to get the 2 threaded rods in, you need a little bit of extra length to slide it in there, or else it's very tough. So basically the bore here, I'm going to get into that piston. So on this side here, there's 4 bolts on the end. There's like a copper crush washer. It's just copper coated. This side's not as bad because it's encased in the manifold block. What we're trying to achieve is getting a sandwich there. The ram and then the housing. And I'm hoping that this will seal the oil from spilling out. This side was a bit tricky because the housing's a little bit concave for the wood. And then there, it did bulge out a little bit, but I think it will seal. So these 2 are like standoff studs, threaded on one side and then a standoff. Again, the crush washer. And again, I'm just trying to seal the flange to the housing on both ends so oil doesn't leak. Step is to get on the slider arm. And this is where I was saying that this block under spring tension comes in handy, because these threaded portions are hard going in. Threaded holes there. Alright. So now we can get the little stand on. Just a gear pump attached to the motor. There's a O-ring on each side of this flange where the gears go. So the O-rings are just under there for now until I get this motor mounted. It's just basically 1 bolt on this bracket here with a lock nut. Oh. This is the manifold block that goes on the end here to the gear pump. 2 dowels, and then the 2 pins for the gear pump. And then that's where the O-ring sits in. Just clean up the surface. Don't want stuff in there to scratch up your gear pump. This oil, everything sticks to this oil. So be careful, don't lose the dowel pins. They slide out easy. Pretty big tolerance on the dowel pins. It's like a slip fit. And that O-ring is on the motor side. It's not quite in there. Make sure it's seated as well. Spacer plate. Alright, so that O-ring is in there. Try to keep it as clean as possible. get it on the 2 pins of the gear pump first. We'll get some bolts in here. Again, just a hex bolt, approximately 2" long, 1.5" long. Just take this off. Oh. Without taking the whole thing. Come on. There we go. There's also 2 O-rings on the bottom side here. Just clean up that face. And they go down, and one is the intake. There's a ball check valve there, so obviously sucks up oil, pressurizes it, goes down through the check valve, goes into the cylinder. You split your piece of wood, you let go of the pedal, fluid's not going to come back into the pump when you let go of the pedal, and then it'll return to tank or the housing. I'm going to do the motor side first before I bolt down this flange. That way I know this flange is seated up against the motor. Tighten these, starting from the center and then crisscross. So I'm going to kind of hold up on the motor on the back side here. I'm going to get these started by hand here. These 3 bolts here, you'll need extension on your socket wrench. I kind of always start bolts by hand, especially in like cast iron aluminum or cast iron. Like, you can strip out the threads. And then extra 1/8 to 1/4, somewhere around there. The other side rail, figure I'll show you this one. So 2 saga cap screws. One is slightly longer than the other. Longer one goes in here with the bracket. And we'll tighten that in. Again, these are just guide rails for the piece of wood, so it stays kind of stable before you split it. So, splitter block goes in there. Button head bolt goes in there. Lock nut. Again, these upper ones are the hard ones to get. Put a piece of tape along the side. Jam your nut in there. Now it's holding it for you. So it's tightened on there. And we'll finish this one. The tape just will stay in there or fall off or whatever. You can get it out afterwards. So again, just socket cap screw, little stubby one. Goes in this side bracket here. There is a washer here. There's a spacer. So this slides. If this valve sticks out, you can just kind of plop it back in. 5/8 for that one too. You have to make sure that moves, or else you won't be able to move the foot pedal. So as long as you can push it by finger, you should be okay there. So this part actually goes in first here. Then you get the lead piece in. Then you want to tension it. You want to make sure the outer casing is in the foot pedal and everything, so you get the proper tension. So we're tightening this back nut first. You don't want to start squeezing the valve. Give it a little bit more tension. You can also pull on it a little bit, just do it by finger. Okay, I think that's alright. Now tighten this one in, then it'll hold it in place. Tilt it up on end. We will fill it with oil. See if there's initial leaks, then we'll fire it up and snap a piece of wood. Now, ended up using hot glue gun on this side. I did try it on this side over here, but it didn't hold, so I ended up finding a piece of rubber here. I got that around the outside flange, so that way when it butts up against the rubber is squeezing in between the flange and the housing. And now there's no initial leaks. I have started it. I was telling you before, the dowel pin, make sure it doesn't come out. When I first started it, the motor was struggling. I guess because that dowel pin came out in that video, I had to reopen it there. So yeah, you gotta kind of make sure that pump assembly is centered and moving free before you fully assemble. So I opened it up, I was running the motor and making sure everything was working. To get that piece of wood out, I fired it up and just pressed the foot pedal here. And yeah, so we'll give it a try now. And you don't really need to bleed the system. Like the oil inside the reservoir is going to go to the lowest point. As soon as that pump fires up, it's going to catch the oil, and it might take a little bit for the first initial bit to get the cylinder to go. Yeah, so this shouldn't be too loud, but it might be a little bit loud with the hydraulic pump running. But yeah, let's snap a piece of wood and see. So a piece of hard maple. This would be a good test. There's a knot in there, so. Anyway, seems to be working. Yeah, so now no leaks. Now I gotta clean up my mess. I know this is a little bit of a life hack video with glue gun and some rubber and stuff, but you can just use silicone to seal it up again. I was just trying something different. And yeah, alright. Just figured I'd show you the progress.